This is the Alden Report.
Today's episode is brought to you by FrontRowBenefits.com, connecting consumers and businesses with front row access to the greatest health insurance that the United States has to offer. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. Folks, listen, if you're like me, if you own a business, if you have a family, or if you're an individual and you're looking for front row access to healthcare, maybe you're tired of your premiums going up. Maybe you don't want to pay those high deductibles anymore. Maybe you're tired of paying more and more for your monthly prescriptions, and you want to make sure that you're getting that VIP access, that front row access, then visit FrontRowBenefits.com and get a free quote. They're connecting consumers and businesses with the top level insurance carriers in the United States at discounted prices. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. That's FrontRowBenefits.com.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Mike Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios. I'm rocking my 99-cent glasses. And as always, I always say how excited I am to have people on that have done real things, done big things, and continue to do big things. My next guest is Ron Carr. He is a internationally recognized speaker. He's a best-selling author, and he helps businesses generate not hundreds of thousands, not millions, but upwards to billions of dollars over the years, showing businesses how to generate profitable revenue. And he also works with individuals as well, helping them with their mindset. You know, a lot of us talk about mindset. We talk about, you know, what can we do to get better and how does it work? I'm really excited because he's got a book called The Velocity Mindset. He talks a lot about that. I mean, it's in the title. So I'm super excited to have him here. Ron, thanks so much for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
So,
and those glasses look great, by the way.
Can you tell that they're scratched? They're actually scratched. Can you see that?
No, I'm just blinded by the mirroring effect.
You know what? I'm honest with the people that listen and watch this, and look, I wear them for two reasons. One, everyone can see. I get naturally bags. No matter how much sleep I get, I naturally have bags under my eyes. So I think I just look cooler. Plus, I'm a big fan of Howard Stern. He kind of taught me that. But these are only 99 cents. My expensive glasses always get ruined. So bet anyway. So listen, man, thanks so much for being here. It's funny, when we got on, we realized we had some mutual friends, and especially within the author space and the speaker space. If you could tell us a little bit about, kind of how you got involved first in the sales world, because a lot of people don't realize this, but whether you're a salesperson or not, you're always selling. And I know that you really kind of focus on that, or have focused on that throughout the years, but I do really want to spend a lot of time about your book as well.
Well, I was selling since the day I was born. I mean, I grew up in a very abusive household. My father was a victim of the Holocaust. So he was very stringent and it was verbally and physically, not sexually abusive. If he did something wrong, the wrath would let go. So I always had to sell my way out of it, for fear of the consequences. So the point is, we're always selling each and every day, no matter what we're doing. And you're absolutely right.
I do want to cut you off there, right there, because I grew up in a tough situation, not really abusive, but I've heard these stories before of people that grow up, and especially as a child, and I want to kind of, maybe you can give me some more detail when you say you're always selling. When a child is in a situation like that, they don't really have anywhere to turn. They don't have resources. They don't have money. They don't have a car. Give me some examples of what exactly do you mean you sold your way out of some of these bad situations?
So, well, we could be having a good moment. If I just spilt a little bit of milk, he would just make a big deal, and I say, "What's a big issue?" And the next thing I know, he's cursing and he's throwing things at me, and so it's like a lot of PTSD going on. So you start thinking ahead, when he's at work and he's about to come home. Okay, is everything in place? Did I do something? Or he's gonna have an issue with this. What am I gonna say? That's what I'm saying. I had to come up with strategies on how I could talk about it in a way that he wouldn't go off. That's what I meant by selling. How do I? And it's what sales is all about. How do we position ourselves, and how do we say things in a certain way so they hear it the right way? and it doesn't lead them to an area you don't want them to go to. Now, I was just doing that for survival. You want to talk about young kids, where do they go? I think it's a great conversation for anybody. I had nowhere to go. Now, it's funny, my mother, who was my mentor later on in life, she was my hero. I realized that, as I got to be a young adult, that my anger was really towards her because she was traveling all over the world doing what she did great. She was a woman ahead of her time, but she basically left us to fend with my father. And I realized that she had as much culpability, and then we had to get through that. And then the rest of her life was an amazing experience as she mentored me in my later years, as a younger man, both in business and personally. So, yeah, I mean, the results were damaging, in the beginning because I had no confidence. Physically, I had some ailments that came from the stress. So it took a while to deal with that. And to this day, my mindset could be affected and is affected. We don't necessarily lose, how the impacts from what we grew up. But the question is, how well do you recognize it? And then what do you do so it doesn't limit you going forward? And that's what I learned as a young man. And that's actually what led to the velocity mindset later on in life.
It's again, having grown up pretty tough as well. Fortunately, I wasn't really necessarily in an abusive situation, but surrounded by crime, drugs, and violence, in my life. And, you always hear people talk about things like, this one drives me crazy. Say, never forget where you came from. That one drives me crazy. And then most people stay there. But then a lot of people, and people don't blame them for this. A lot of people make the excuse of, hey, you know what? I'm a product of my environment. Therefore, I'm just not going to be successful because I grew up with the chips stacked against me, and it just kind of is what it is, and people give up. But what you're describing and what you've done is you almost use that as your kind of like superpower. Talk a little bit about people who like to blame their parents. They like to blame where they were born. They like to blame a natural disaster. They blame everything else for where they're at in life, and then they just stay there. Talk about how you can actually use those adverse situations to really kind of turn it into a superpower.
So I have a big answer for that. So I was a victim. I played the victim for, I don't know, a couple of decades early on in my life. It didn't serve me well. It really hindered me from going further in life that I could have. And as I got to my older years, specifically when I was finished with the presidency of the National Speakers Association in 2014, I had 9 surgeries in the next 3 years, most of them on my back. And as I was laid up, I couldn't speak or do much. I started assessing my life, and I looked at my successes, and I've had some really good successes, obviously, but I'm sorry about that. But but besides these successes, I looked at the things that I didn't do in my life, and I realized why I didn't do them. It was the things that held me back. And so I started, I was a sales and leadership expert up to that point, still am, but I started getting more of a passion right now to realize that, I'm on the back nine of my life. How well are these stories serving you? And if they're not serving you, what are you going to do differently because you only have so much time left? And that concept of velocity started taking over. And my mission was to write the velocity mindset, to talk about the things that stop us, the stories we tell ourselves, how we internalize what happened to us, and we make our own stories about that, and how it stops us, and all the other stuff that's in the book. Because right now, I don't want anybody waking up after a period of time, whether it's a year, whether it's your life, and realizing, oh, I'm really disappointed because I didn't get to where I wanted to be because all those things held me back my whole life. So the point is that I'm saying, Mike, is you have to deal with it. Don't let it stop you, because you, at the end of the day, you're going to be the one who loses. But at the same token, you have to allow yourself and give yourself some room as you deal with it. So, for example, some people coming out of those situations will say, well, I'm never, ever going to allow myself to think like a victim would do it again. Well, the reality is you're susceptible to that. It's in your DNA. It's not trying to stop it from ever happening. It's recognizing it immediately that's happening and having tools to deal with it immediately so it doesn't take you down a rabbit hole. That's what we're talking about. Because we're all human. We're all susceptible to, the things that we knew or what we thought we knew to be true. Now, we also have to realize that everything in our life, that how we approach things is really based on the story we are telling ourselves. So whenever someone says something to us, whenever an activity comes at us, we create a story as to what we think it was meant. To give you an illustration, you can have two kids in junior high school wanting to go out for the band. Teacher sees both kids don't have any musical bones in their body. Goes to one person, student A, and says, look, you really don't have any ability to do this. It's not the right thing. Find something that really makes you rock and go do it. She says the same thing as student B. Student A takes that, creates a story, and says, oh, she thinks I'm not good enough to be a great musician. I'm going to show her, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to become the best musician in the world, and goes out and does that. Well, we got to remember that every story is fueled by emotion. So he created a story, and the emotion that fueled him was to prove everybody wrong, and it served him well. So if you got a story that's serving you well, keep doing it. Student B, on the other hand, creates a different story and says, oh God, I'll never be good at music. Music sucks. I don't want to have anything to do with it. They live a life where they don't even listen to music. They don't even want to talk to anybody in music because they think that they're inferior when it comes to music. And that's the story that they create. That doesn't have some great emotion. It's got negative emotion. But if they choose to live with it, it holds them back from doing things that they could really enjoy. Now, if we understand that whenever something happens to us or something's said to us, and if we accept the fact that we create a story around it, and if we recognize that the story is not serving us well, here's the good news. Whoever wrote the story can rewrite it.
I love it.
You wrote the story. No one else did. You think the story is real. It's not real. It's just a story. And when you realize it like that, the pressure starts going off your shoulders, you're alleviated, you're not as tense, stressed, whatever. And now it allows you to think creatively to come up with a different way of doing it. So if I can, Mike, I'd like to share a business example of how this played out for me.
Absolutely.
You talked about sales. I wanted to get a sales job right after college in 78. I couldn't find a sales job to save my life. I went to medical device because they had the company cars, they had all the traps. And they kept saying, well, you don't have experience. And I said, well, how do you have experience if you're not given a shot? So I had to settle for a retail job as an assistant store manager. And finally, in 1980, Royal Business Machines decided to take a gamble on me. Now, for your younger listeners, I know they're going to laugh at what I'm about to say, but there was a major transformation in 1980 in copiers. They went from liquid toner that spilled all over your clothes and got you dirty to the dry bond toner, crisp cartridges, simple in and out, and it prints 15 copies a minute of crisp copies. And they were seducing me on this. And I said, where's the collator? Don't worry about it, it'll be out in 6 months. Duplicator, 6 months. Okay, it's a sales job, I'll take it. For 2 months, Mike, my butt hurt really bad of all the doors that were slamming me on the way out, because I go into an office manager and I say, hey, so I got a copier to sell you, what are you doing for copier? They say, can you do what the big machine on the third floor does? I said, what does it do? Duplicates. Nope. Correlates. Nope. Come back when it does. So all of a sudden I started becoming a victim. Oh, my company sucks. They don't have the right materials. It's not my fault. It's their fault. But then I started saying, but wait a minute, you're not making a living. What's your story about that? Oh, I suck. I can't sell as a salesperson. I'll never be a salesperson. And I realized I needed timeout. Sometimes to gain velocity, you need to pause. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, we know that rule of insanity. So I went and had a board meeting with me, myself, and I in a diner in New Jersey. And when I realized, that this was just a story, I said, okay, after I got rid of all the emotion, I said, what's going on? I'm trying to sell a copier. What are they saying? They got a bigger one. So maybe you need to change the conversation. And then I asked myself, what's a copier do? And I realized it's a communication vehicle. So I said, let's go start that conversation. And I went to the next office manager and said, would you agree that a copier is nothing more than a communication vehicle? And she goes, absolutely. When it comes to that, what do you think the biggest challenges? Mike, it was like I was a therapist. She was on my couch telling me her woes. And she goes, let me tell you, Bob or Sally on the first floor have to make one copy. By the time they get to the third floor, the machinist and have all the conversations, then they stand behind all those big jobs, make the return trip, they could waste 2 hours. I said, how often does that happen? She goes, try the equivalent of 3 full-time employees. I said, how would you like them back? She goes, how are you going to get them back for me? I said, look, I'm not here to compete with that big machine on the third floor. It's a great machine, keep it. I'm here to fill in your gaps. You should buy 3 of my machines, one for every floor, to deal with all the onesies and twosies and copies, and you'll get those 2 full-time employees back. And Mike, I sold 3 copiers that day. So the point is, in the first 2 months, I was stalled because of the story I was telling myself. I realized it wasn't serving me well. If you don't like the reaction, change the action. So I paused to gain velocity. I looked at what the situation really was, realized what wasn't working, tried a different conversation, and it led to a different result. I would never have gotten to that point in my life if I didn't do the other transformation work I did since I was a child.
In a second, I want to talk to you a little bit more about adversity and if it's necessary in business and just in life in order to be successful. Again,
Sure.
We're on with Ron Carr. He is an internationally recognized speaker. He's helped businesses generate billions of dollars. He's been at it for 35 plus years. His latest book called the Velocity Mindset. Really, again, the title just speaks for itself, right? So if you'd like some more information about Ron and what he's doing, especially with his book, you can just go to velocitymindset.com. You can put in your email address right there. He does daily videos. It's absolutely free. You sign up, motivational stuff to really help you, with your mindset. He's kind of alluded to this a little bit as well. We all need help. He needs help. I need help. And a lot of times we don't want to help ourselves. So, going to someone like Ron, who has been through it all and continues to help others. I always like to say, and I forget who I learned this from, but they say the greatest experiences are the experiences of others. So go to velocitymindset.com and check out what he's doing there, and obviously pick up the book. Today's episode is brought to you by frontrowbenefits.com, connecting consumers and businesses with front row access to the greatest health insurance that the United States has to offer. Visit frontrowbenefits.com. Folks, listen, if you're like me, if you own a business, if you have a family, or if you're an individual and you're looking for front row access to healthcare, maybe you're tired of your premiums going up. Maybe you don't want to pay those high deductibles anymore. Maybe you're tired of paying more and more for your monthly prescriptions, and you want to make sure that you're getting that VIP access, that front row access, then visit frontrowbenefits.com and get a free quote. They're connecting consumers and businesses with the top level insurance carriers in the United States at discounted prices. Visit frontrowbenefits.com. That's frontrowbenefits.com. So, the theme that we've kind of talked about a little bit before, and I've asked this question pretty much that, if it gets brought up on the podcast, and I remember, asking a similar question to this to Les Brown. And so do you think it's necessary to go through kind of difficult times, really difficult times, to really strengthen your mindset and then use that to your advantage? And then I think the key element is what you're kind of talking about, is that ability to just shift and change the story. But is it necessary for success to go through these difficult times?
No. Meaning, well, the answer is no, because not everybody goes through them. So that's number one. But everybody's had their own defeats.
Right.
And what everybody has to understand is everybody's afraid to fail. You should cherish failing. When I was a manager and I looked at people,
let me stop you there for a second. Okay. We hear this a lot too, right? And they say, fail fast, or everybody's going to fail, and you should cherish failure, I think is what you just said. Look, I have failed over and over and over again. I've declared bankruptcy. I've been divorced. I've lost millions. I've had millions stolen from me. I've had bank accounts frozen. like the worst shit ever. And I am getting chills of thinking about it because sometimes you're on the verge of literally having a nervous breakdown, right? There's no way I'm embracing that shit. But is it really?
Yeah, but what did you learn from that shit? And
Oh,
did that learning propel you forward?
It did.
That's all we're looking for.
Right.
And that's a good failure.
Right.
A good failure is when something doesn't go right and you look at it when the emotion goes away, because remember, you already created a story about that failure.
Right.
You're in a cortisol pitfall. Wait for that emotion to go away and then calmly look at it and say, what did I learn? What will I not do again? What will I do differently? And that's the important part. We're all going to fail. Look, a baseball hitter, okay? Baseball player. He bats 300. He gets rewarded with $15 million, $20 million a year.
Right.
What does that mean? For a 300 hitter, out of every 10 at bats, he gets 3 hits. He could strike out 7 times miserably, and he's still a hero. So let's stop the perfectionism. Let's stop thinking about that we have to succeed in everything we're doing. Our job is to live fulfilling lives and move the needle forward for ourselves and those who count on us. And what can we take from the failures we've had in life that help us move forward? So no one has to live through a disaster in order to learn from it and be successful. They have to, what I believe everybody needs to do. I'm divorced. So I'm on the dating apps, and I put on my profile, I'm looking for an enlightened woman. I really am. In other words, I'm looking for a woman who's been through her own crap, who went into herself, saw what she was all about, and figured out what she's about and what she can do differently and wants to do whatever. Because that's how I think. We all have to be enlightened. If we go inside of ourselves to work on how we can become the best version of who we are on a daily basis, you're on your way. And you don't need to come back from a disaster. You don't have to come from a disaster to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But like you said, I mean, we all suffer. I think first when we got on, I learned a lot from Zig Ziglar. We all suffer temporary defeats. But you're right. It is the ability to change the story and to change the mindset. Now, the velocity mindset, again, the title kind of speaks for itself. And when we think about the world that we're living in now, the instant gratification world that we're looking for with the likes and the shares and the pills that people are popping to feel great almost instantly. Talk a little bit about the speed of success and how to achieve it properly, because I think a lot of people might misinterpret just the title as well.
So when we hear the word velocity, Mike, when you hear the word velocity, what are the words that come to your mind?
Speed.
Yeah, right. And that's what most people could say, speed, momentum and all that. If that's all you think about, then you're more likely to come up with burnout than velocity.
Right.
An example that I can talk about, and we talk about in the book, your tasks. Everybody's driven by the to-do list. And how many days have we had where we're so busy going task to task to task to task, and all of a sudden we start at 8 a.m, and now it's all of a sudden dinner time, haven't had time for lunch, you're exhausted, and you're going, oh my God, look at all these tasks I completed. But then you're thinking about, but wait a minute, it didn't move me forward in what's important to me. How often do we have those days? And we're driven to be task-oriented. We need to change that, and we need to be purpose-oriented, driven by direction. The physics definition of velocity is speed plus direction. So if you look at it that way, the direction, the goal, the objective, what you're trying to achieve, that has to be clear in your mind. Now, distinction. A lot of people say, well, I don't know what I want in life, if they're going to start with that one. Or I don't know, what I want here. Well, you don't have to have it all figured out, because as Dr. Nito Cobain says, president of High Point University, who wrote the foreword to the book, the clarity of your vision only comes from walking the journey. But you need to start with a kernel of a vision, something that's passionate, that drives you, that you really want to do it no matter what you have to go through to do it, and something that you really want for whatever reason, okay? To give you an example, a pilot, let's suppose you're in Newark Airport going to go to Miami, and you get to the plane, you go to the pilot, where are we going? He goes, wherever the winds take us. Would you stay on that plane? The answer is no. But how does a pilot figure out how they're going or where they're going? They start with the end in sight first. They see Miami, all right, or Fort Lauderdale. They work their way back. What are the 3 or 4 waypoints that we have to pass, that if we pass them, we know we're on our way to Fort Lauderdale? They identify them. Then they take into account all the potential obstacles, storms, winds, whatever. And from that, they come up with the best flight plan that gets them there the safest and fastest way. But it's all driven by where they want to go, that direction. We need to be purpose-driven, not task-driven. And whether you're going on a sales call, whether you're going on for a year performance or whatever you're doing, or a life performance, whatever it is, it's got to be driven by the end result that you want, because that's going to change and impact the decisions you make and the tasks that you act on. I'll give you an example. So a salesperson, a sales exec will call me up and they say, help me out, and I want this big account that I'm after. I said, great. So what's your sales cycle? 5 calls. Maybe it takes 5 calls usually to close that kind of deal. I said, great. What call is this? Number 1. I go, good. What's your goal for the call? I want to close the business. Wait a minute. Let's stop here. You're telling me it's usually 5 calls to close a deal like this, and your goal for the first call is close the business. If that's the case, you're going to be self-focused. You're going to be puking people out of knowledge about everything, and you're going to be closing without any context, and you're not getting a deal. What should be the appropriate goal for that call? The appropriate goal should be to qualify whether or not you're both a good fit for each other, and together, what is the path forward?
Right.
That goal is going to lead to a different set of actions on the call than the goal of trying to close it. That's why that direction, what it is you're trying to accomplish, is so critical to your velocity. And it has to drive you in every decision you're making and the tasks that you take on. If all you're doing is going from the bottom up and doing task, yeah, you're accomplishing tasks, but at the end of the day, you might be falling very well short of what is really important to you.
What if you're a salesperson who is selling something that, they believe in, but they're not necessarily, it's not their purpose, so to speak, in life or what have you. And they're just kind of going about the day to day just to kind of make ends meet. What do you say to those people? Because there's a lot of, I'll give you an example. I right out of college, before I went to law school, it was by the greatest things I ever did. I sold cars. I sold Lincolns in '97. It was great. It was a great experience for me. But I got to a point where I kind of hated it. And every day I would just look in the mirror and tell myself how much I hate it. By the way, I was good at it too. But I didn't like it. I've heard advice like, oh, go find your purpose then, leave. Like, what do you say to these people who are just kind of going through the motions right now, especially now, right? Well,
first of all, people are living today. We got the mass resignation. So they are doing just that. If they're not liking it or they're not being fulfilled, they're not waiting around many years like we used to do when we were young, because that's what we were taught and trained to do. It's a different world today.
Right.
But getting to your question, what if you're in a situation that you're not really liking, and if for some reason you can't make a change or whatever, you've got to find some way for alignment. And that's a key part of a velocity. How could you align what's important to your values and what is important to you with what you're doing? So for example, it's a shallow example, but I'm just trying to give you an illustration. Take that car salesperson, right? They hate the fact, people keep coming in, they beat them up on price, they hate it, blah, blah, blah. And that's because they themselves are training their customers in how to have those conversations, right? They're only talking about price and everything. But if your values as that salesperson is you really want to help people in life, and you don't see how handling over cars is going to help them, maybe have a different conversation. And if you start asking them, saying, hey, what is the great driving experience you want for you and your family going forward? Let's just talk about that. Forget the price for a second. Because what I'm really here for is to create that driving experience that's going to make the greatest impact on you and your lives. At least then you're now tailoring the conversation to fit what's important to you in life.
Yeah, I'm listening to you, man, and obviously you know how to sell, brother, because it's and it just goes back to the kind of the big theme of everything that's been throughout your life is changing the story, changing the direction, right? To really ultimately to your advantage, and in a positive way too, right?
Right, but it's to our advantage, but we also have to recognize the biggest thing about what holds people back, and it's an influence too. It's not just salespeople, managers, coaches, whatever. When we talk about the neuroscience and how to get engagement so that you can influence others, people do it the wrong way. And the one simple thing that they can change today, they don't even have to read the book. Stop being self-focused and be customer focused. For example, we know that the brain chemistry changes. So if I'm selling to you, Mike, and let's say it's a car, right? And I'll say, okay, so what kind of car you want? And you say, well, I'm looking at the Benz or Toyota. I say, great. What color do you want? All questions that are not really getting you going, and you have that wall up because you think I'm trying to sell you, which I am, and blah blah blah. But if I start the conversation differently and take it around from self-focus, because I just see dollar signs, and I go, hey, Mike, when you get into that Benza, what are the three things you want to feel when you're driving that car for you and your family? And now you're getting into your mindset about where you're trying to go and what's important to you. Just do that one transition, go from a self-focused mindset to a customer-focused mindset. And customer could be employee, it could be anybody you're trying to influence. Ask them where they're trying to go, and then present what you have in context to what's important to them. Just that one little change will make you become more influential, more than you ever thought was possible.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest things that I learned to selling cars, and I was a recruiter for a consulting firm when I was in law school as well. And one of the things I definitely learned that works, and I think it's kind of what we're talking about here as well, is building rapport, with people, getting to know the person rather than trying to sell them right away. I think a lot of salespeople, like you said, are just trying to one call close, so to speak, and try to just get that deal done where they're not. By the way, I actually made a mistake a couple of months ago, basically of what we're talking about. I just went right into sales mode, and I realized it like in the middle of it that I lost the deal. Well, actually, we ended up getting it, but I was like, shit, I lost it because I was actually kind of busy, and I probably shouldn't have even taken the call. I probably should have scheduled it out. So I just went right into sales mode, figuring I could just close it, and I could just tell right away that it turned the guy off. And we ended up, fortunately, was able to turn it around. But I think you're right. A lot of people, especially salespeople, are just too focused on the sale and not necessarily
But it's also but it's also leaders. So one thing we say everybody in the world is a leader. So when we say this book's on leadership, because you lead your lives, you lead your families, you lead yourself. So we're all leaders. So if you can accept that, and I ask my audiences sometimes, if it's a sales audience, how many of you can't wait when you got to buy something next time to meet the next sales rep who's going to give you 20 reasons why you should buy it, which 18 mean nothing to you? Raise your hands, and that one hand goes up. There's usually one hand that always goes up.
Right.
And then you say, okay, now when you have to buy something the next time, how many of you would value the help of someone to make sure you're buying the right thing? Raise your hands, and they all go up. That's what a leader does. Okay. So, but now I'm talking about a manager. I was in a CEO's office who has been on a retainer with me for several years. And he's a manufacturer, and his supervisor came running in. And he goes, "Oh, I can't stand this person." I said, "What's wrong?" "He's late. He's making everybody else late." I said, "Why is he late?" "He's on a cell phone." So what'd you do? I went up to him and said, "Get off the damn cell phone." What did he do? He said, "But why? Everybody else is on a cell phone." And I said, "But you're late." He goes, "Well, when I finish my call." And he goes, "Get off the damn cell phone." And he walked away. I said, "How well did that serve you?" I replayed that with him, where I fed to him what he said to the guy. And after 2 minutes, he said, "Stop." I wouldn't have even listened to myself. And I said, "Okay, what do you know about this worker? What motivates him?" "He wants to be a master welder." "Okay, what's involved?" "Excellent quality and timeliness." "How's this quality?" "Perfect. That's why we love him." "How's his timeliness?" "Usually good, but right now it's 20 minutes and he's screwing everybody up." So you go to him and you say, "Look, you really want to be a master welder, right?" And he's going to go, "Yeah." So, you need excellent quality, which you have. That's why we love you. You also need timeliness, which you're really good at usually, but this time we're 20 minutes late. What do you think we can do to get you back on track so that you can stay on your track to becoming a master welder. He went out and had that conversation. The cell phone never ever came up. And miraculously, that guy, the worker, was even coming up with his own ideas of what he could do. And they got it back on track. The thing is, we tend to have arguments about the wrong things. We're not looking at that end result that we want. And we're not looking at what are the right tasks that's going to help us get there. And also, as leaders, we have to understand one thing. We have to create an environment, whether it's a customer, an employee, a family, we have to create a safe environment for them to want to talk to us. I learned that from my father. I had to create a safe environment for him to listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that is if you're a salesperson and, if you're going into, let's say, even if a person sets up an appointment 2 weeks ago with you, and today's the appointment, you have to think about it in the head. Okay, they're probably going to have the cortisol up because they think I'm trying to sell them. And they are probably in the middle of the fires that day. I got to get them out of that cortisol. I got to reduce it. If all you start doing is going and talking about yourself, your products, you're doing the opposite. But if you go in and saying, look, tell me what's important to you, where you're going, what are your challenges, that's going to calm them down, change the chemistry. That's how you create the environment for them to want to be engaged with you. And so if I start steaming to an employee, who's screwing me up and he sees me coming over, what's going on in his head? Alarm bells, man the battle stations, incoming.
Right.
And they're ready, girding up for the fight, right? And now you start yelling at them. What are they doing? They're going to cover their ass. That's all they're doing. They're not even listening to the conversation or trying to solve the problem. They're just trying to defend themselves. So are you creating a safe environment for people to have the right conversation with you so you both can move forward?
Wow, man. Again, as I'm listening to you too, I feel like I said this once before and the guy didn't like it. It was Marshall Goldsmith. But I feel like it, I'm getting free coaching and training from you, and I kind of am. So this is also why I love doing this, to be able to connect with people like you that, can give solid advice. Listen, if you're listening right now, and if you own a business, or you heard this, if you've been listening since the beginning, which I hope you have, Ron said he's been selling since the day he was born. We actually all have. And you have to kind of change your mindset to that. But also what Ron has been talking about is changing the narrative, changing the story in a way that's beneficial really for both people. Listen, if you want some more information about Ron, you can just go to his website, velocitymindset.com. There's daily videos out there, daily motivational videos, daily videos that help kind of teach you and project your income into a place where you really want it to be. So go to velocitymindset.com. You can also just go to roncarr.com. That's Karr as well. Ron, listen, I know you're busy. By the way, also when you do go there, make sure you pick up his book. Right now he has it for 99 cents, which I'm a big fan of on the digital version. 99 cents. It's available on Amazon. You can get to it from his website as well. Again, called The Velocity Mindset.
That's just for this week.
Oh, okay. Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, you know what? By the time they listen to it might not be so. Oh, well. Listen, so before I let you go, anything that you want to leave with our viewers or listeners, maybe about the theme to Velocity Mindset?
So I think that the pandemic that we all suffered through, and we all suffered through it in some way, shape, or form, has been the great equalizer for all of us. And where it forced all of us to pause, is what we talk about in the book, To Gain Velocity. It forced us to pause. And what you saw was a lot of us started thinking about, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? How does it make sense? What do I really want? And it caused a lot of us to change direction of our lives because we realized the road we were on was not where we wanted to be. A lot of us moved to different places. We changed positions or whatever. Take that understanding of what the value of pausing is and reassessing what you really want in life, and start doing that kind of activity on an ongoing basis, whether you do it every year, every month, or even every day, to make sure that the tasks you're doing today are relevant to where you want to go. You saw the benefit of that. That's what we're talking about today.
Wow, man. Again, just such great sound advice. And, I was thinking, again, as you're saying that, and I've done a lot of that myself over the past couple of years. I had this big, massive house, sold it. It was only two of us, didn't necessarily need it, and really started to focusing on more of the experiences in life than the material things. And I think a lot of us are finally starting to see that. Again, we've been on with Ron Carr. He's an internationally recognized speaker. He's helped Fortune 100 companies generate billions in sales. He also works with people to help them project, and increase their velocity, so to speak. His latest book is called The Velocity Mindset. You can go to velocitymindset.com, put in your information. You can pick up the book there. It's also available pretty much everywhere where books are sold. So again, if you'd like some more information about Ron, go to velocitymindset.com. This has been another edition of the Alden Report. My name is Mike Alden. That's Ron Carr, and we'll see you soon. Today's episode is brought to you by frontrowbenefits.com, connecting consumers and businesses with front row access to the greatest health insurance that the United States has to offer. Visit frontrowbenefits.com. Folks, listen, if you're like me, if you own a business, if you have a family, or if you're an individual and you're looking for front row access to healthcare, maybe you're tired of your premiums going up. Maybe you don't want to pay those high deductibles anymore. Maybe you're tired of paying more and more for your monthly prescriptions, and you want to make sure that you're getting that VIP access, that front row access. Then visit frontrowbenefits.com and get a free quote. They're connecting consumers and businesses with the top level insurance carriers in the United States at discounted prices. Visit frontrowbenefits.com. That's frontrowbenefits.com.